Hey, running friends. Welcome to the Wrinkled Runner podcast. I'm Sherry, the Wrinkled Runner. I'm over 50 and I love to run wherever I go, but Buffalo, New York is my home. If you are looking to start to run or you're an older runner, this podcast is especially for you, so subscribe now. I love to help people get running and keep running. Hey runners, welcome to the last run of the RRCA Start to Run program. If you weren't able to join me for the live run last week, here's the audio from that Facebook program. Of course, the day that I had planned for the run ended up being really windy and really cold. So there's a lot of wind noise in the episode, so hopefully that's not too annoying for you. So we're going to get into it right away, and I start the 5-minute warm-up pretty quick, so just be ready. Warm up. Okay, 5-minute warm-up starting now. And like I said before during our my testing time, if you're joining me and you're just kind of listening in on Facebook without knowing what's going on, our podcast, over on the podcast, we've been doing the RRCA Start to Run program. And we've been doing that this is the week 10, and it's our final run. And I wanted to do that live. I wanted to run with anybody who wanted to, and I'm also recording this so that will be part of the podcast episodes over on the Wrinkled Runner podcast website, so that you can go through the entire RRCA Start to Run program, starting with a 1-minute run, 4-minute walk, and we go through all of that, and then after that we start getting into 5 minutes of running and then less walking, and you start doing a switch. So last week was a 9-minute run, 1-minute walk, and even though you get to that point and you know that the next week is going to be a 30-minute straight run, there's something psychological about being able to stop and even just walk for that 1 minute in between the 9-minute runs, where this is 30 minutes of straight running. Now, for those of you who have been with me this whole time, if you can't do the whole straight 30 minutes, then don't do it. Be where you are, and this will be here when you want it, when you need it, when you can get to that point. So wherever you are in the process, if you need to stop and walk, then you need to stop and walk. We all do at one point or another. So don't think that you have to get to this point within that 10 weeks. You're doing you, get there when you can, and this will always be there for you. And like I've said in the past, if you aren't there, or you had to quit for a week or something, you need to go back to not even where you left off, but a week or two before that to get back into it again, because we do lose running fitness, especially those of you who are just starting to run. It does not, you lose it faster. You don't build up as much until you've been running for a while. And so I'm finding I'm just getting out of my off season, I call it, which is between trainings for things, and I just started training for a half marathon. It's a pretend half marathon because I kind of like to always be kind of in half marathon shape, and by the time I finish this half marathon training, I will be going into marathon training, and so I want to get there fitness wise. And so the past few months I've been running very easy, some speed work but not a lot. And so I've lost some running fitness. I would not be able to run the way I was running when I was in training back in the fall. So it's going to take me a few weeks to get back to where I was. And that's just a fact of running life. So wherever you are in your running, you just know that, you can't stop for a few weeks and then get right back into it, as soon as you are don't do like the last time you did a 6, I think it was a 6-3, and now you're joining me for the 30-minute run. I want you to make sure that you have the running fitness built up that you need in order to get to this point. So for those of you who maybe just be listening on Facebook, if you want to go back, you can go back at the podcast and join in if you'd like to start to run. So we have 1 minute left before we're going to go into, actually we have 18 seconds left before we go into our 30-minute run. So here we go, guys. Those of you who are joining and getting to this 30-minute run, I hope you're excited about it, maybe a little nervous about it, wondering, can I actually do this? Here we go, 1 and run, 30 minutes. I'm going to try to run slowly just so that I don't get too yucky. Those of you who've been following me know that I mute out when I have to sniffle, because running in the cold here in Buffalo really gives me the sniffles, and I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum here, but I can't promise you're not going to not hear that over the next half hour, but I'm going to try to keep it back a bit to try to stop that from happening too very much. So if you're joining in right now, there are some things that I want to talk about that I don't want you to forget about going forward, that we've talked about over the past 10 weeks, and there's been a lot of stuff, but there are some highlights that I want to go over just so that you can keep them fresh in your mind. We talked about the warm-up and finding ways of warming up, and that can be more than just walking for the 5 minutes. We also talked about strength training. And strength training, I find, really helps me, not just with cross training, but training the muscles that I use for my running. And I like to divide it up into different days. And I've tried to get you as your homework every week to do strength training at least twice a week for 10 minutes. And the other hint I have about strength training, for a while, I like variety in everything that I do. So I would jump all over the place. And every time I went to the gym, I would just look up strength training for runners, and whatever that program said to do, that's what I would do. And then I'd do a different one the next week, and I would do a different day for a different thing the next week. And I find with being consistent that, for me anyway, it is best just to have the same routine. And I might switch it up every 4, 5, 6 months or so just to do something different. But I try to keep that up for a while and stay consistent in what I'm doing and try to get better over that kind of program than just doing something willy-nilly every week. So I've just been doing arms on one day, and then on another day I do legs, and then I do drills, some running drills, and then on a third day I do core work, which isn't just abs, it's all like in the middle, the part of your body that keeps you stabilized. And then I also do hip work because I have what's called hip drop, and I'm trying to kind of work that out of my body. And so I do some specific glute and hip exercises for that. Now you may have different things or different weaknesses that you're going to want to train. And so if you can identify them, then that's something that you can seek out in your strength work. I know what my weaknesses are, and I also want to be able to strengthen those running muscles as well. And drills also help with that. So part of what this process hopefully taught you is that running goes beyond just going outside or on the treadmill for a run. There's other things that you can do to make you a better runner, make you kind of an all-around athlete while progressing what your running is. And I find consistency with the strength training, that can wane. Sometimes I'm really, really good at it. Sometimes time will go by and I realize I'm not so great at it, but I'm really finding that sticking to one program is really working for me, where I'm just doing the same thing with my arms, the same leg exercises, and the same core work, and I will do that for a while instead of like switching every week trying to find the best one or the most optimal one, because strength training, it's not my favorite thing to do. It's most runners I think you'll talk to, it's not their favorite thing to do. So it's what's going to get you to do it is the best program for you. Now, you could meet with a personal trainer if you belong to a gym, even if you just meet for a couple of sessions, and to try to get a program that is more personalized to you. That's one thing I've really tried to stress over the last 10 weeks is that when we personalize our training and our running, then that is going to help us instead of just following something off the internet and you have to do it this way and you have to do this first, and there are people who will tell you that there's an optimal time to strength train before or after your runs, or before or after eating whatever. And you know what? If it's not going to work for you, then you're not going to do it and you're not going to get anything in. So I feel like running is my priority. So that's what I prioritize. And I always go out for my run first. And on those days that I don't have time to pop down to the gym, I at least got my run in instead of worrying that, well, I really should have strength trained first, and but if I do that, I can't get my run in. Prioritize the sport or the activity that is most meaningful for you. The other thing, and it goes along with strength training, is cross training. Cross training is when you do something that is not running, but it enhances your running. So I like to use the example of I like to do spin bike, which to me that's debatable whether that's cross training or not, because if you've ever done spinning, that is very intense. But bicycling, just going out for a bike ride on a normal bike out in the open air can be great cross training. And things like swimming as well can be cross training. In fact, if you get injured when you're running, you can do what's called aqua jogging. Get in a pool, and there's these things that go on your body, and you run across the pool. And it's not easy, but it can keep you conditioned for running, even if there's something in your leg or whatever that is injured, so that you can't do the pounding of running, but you can keep your body ready to run when that injury gets better. So swimming, biking, those kinds of things are cross training. The thing that I like to do a lot is I really like to play tennis. I'm really bad at it, but I do like to play it. Now, because of the motions of tennis, you're not it would not be considered cross-training for a run because a runner, because the motions don't enhance anything with your running. In fact, the side-to-side motion, some people actually will actively avoid playing tennis if they're runners because it is so, maybe not opposite, but it's not optimal for your running. But I like to play it. And so when I play tennis, though, that is not considered cross-training. So you have to find things that enhance your running. And you can find resources online, and I'll, of course, list them in the show notes of the podcast episode that this is going to be. And you can see the different cross-training methods that you can have. And it just makes running and exercising that much more fun when you can add variables to that. So if you are wondering another way to keep going with your running, then that cross-training concept is something that, you might learn another new sport. Trying to get away from the wind. Hopefully it's not picking up too much here. So I will direct you then to that episode of the cross-training stuff. And there's also, over on the website, there's also different resources for what constitutes cross-training and different things that you can do for that. Now, what I would like to do in the not too distant future, because the podcast season is going to be done at the end of April, but I would like to interview one of you who have been doing this since January, along with the podcast, and just how it's going, different questions you may have for me as a coach. And if you're brave and you would like to be on the Wrinkled podcast, then you can send me an email, sherry@wrinkledrunner.com, and kind of tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me how you got started running, and we can connect, and perhaps you can be on an episode of the Wrinkled Runner. So we are about, it's 1:17, so we have 18 more minutes to go for this 30-minute run. I hope you're feeling good, and I hope you're feeling excited about this, and that intimidation you may have felt of your first 30-minute is kind of dissipating right now. I know it's like race day, whenever I go for a race, I'm really, really anxious the morning of, the day before, or the few days before. I wonder why the heck I'm doing that. But then, the time goes by and you start just running for yourself. And so I hope that that's where you are in your run today, in that if you had felt any anxiety, that that's kind of going away for you right now. But don't forget, if you do have to take a walk break, then take a walk break. That way you'll be fresh, so that you can finish this strongly. So another concept that I want to reiterate from the past 10 weeks is your rest and recovery days, and how important those are, especially when you have first started running. And, well, I shouldn't say that. It's important no matter where you are in your running. Those rest and recovery days are important because that is how our bodies take us to the next level. If we're constantly beating them down, then we are not going to get to the next level of fitness, and we won't be able to, get faster or go longer if our bodies are in a constant state of that little bit of damage that we do with every run. And like I said before, bodybuilders, they really have that honed in. They really understand the concept of recovery and how important that is. And runners, I think we're getting to that place. You hear about it more and more and how important it is, but I don't think we're there yet where, as a collective, that concept is really honed in. I think a lot of us still think that we need to pound the pavement, every day, and it can be hard when you're having an easy day or an easy run day or a recovery run, and you see other people running around you. It's tempting to want to pick up the pace. So it's always important to know what your runs are and what they're for. And on the days that you have total rest and recovery, you need to take those and just let your body do its work. Let those muscles get back into running shape to get you so that the next run isn't as hard. And you'll find that as your body is recovering and as you run more, all the different things work together so that next month, when you go out for a 30-minute run, if you've been consistent, then how you feel today is, you're not even going to remember what that feels like in a month. It's going to be a lot easier. You're going to be thinking about, gee, I could run a 5K. Maybe I'll go up to a 10K. All of the things that we do when we run stack on one another. No run is by itself. Everything that we do has a purpose, and we do our bodies the most optimal good when we understand what the purposes are, and we let our bodies do them. So make sure that you're getting those rest and recovery days and build those into your training program. They are part of your training. They are not instead of a run. They are part of your training. And in a few weeks, I am going to be interviewing Dr. Robert Wolf, who holds the patents for the amino company, and he knows all there is to know about metabolism and amino acids and aging and recovery. And we're going to be doing a podcast together on recovery and how our bodies recover and the things that we can do to make our recovery optimum, and all the things that are happening inside when your body is recovering from a run, from a strength training session, from whatever it is you're putting your body through, and how that helps us to go beyond where we are now. So I'm excited for that. He is a doctor. He is the director at a university, and he has some very interesting things to say and is extremely knowledgeable about all the different things that go into recovery, especially when it comes to amino acid and proteins and the things that your body does to get you recovered. And I'll be interviewing him. Actually, I'll be interviewing him tomorrow, and that podcast episode will be out the first week of April. So the other stuff that I want you to remember about is about nutrition. Now, I'm not a nutritionist, so I can't give you specific, meal plans or, eat this much of this or this much of whatever. But there are resources out there, and fueling your running is so, so important. I can tell you from my own experience, when I was under fueling, my running suffered greatly. You have to fuel your runs, and it looks different for different people, and that's why I'm also always pushing you to know your own body, because our bodies are unique, and our specific science has to blend with the other science that is out there about running and fueling and everybody's different. So don't ever just look at a plan for running or just a diet in general and follow it to a T and ignore your body and ignore the signals, because nothing that you find is going to be perfect unless you are working with a legitimate nutrition specialist, a registered dietitian, somebody who knows what they're talking about. And there are people out there, and there are plans that you can get based off of your specific physiology. And if that's something that you're interested in, then I would say go ahead and do that rather than buying the latest diet off the shelf and trying that. Especially if you really want to get better at running, your fueling is going to look different than someone who wants to lose a bunch of weight, who is sedentary. So you have to take all of that stuff into consideration when you're talking about nutrition. And I know for a lot of you, and for me, I got into running to lose weight. And that was a while ago. And my fueling looks a lot different than it does then, or that it did then, because I know more about it. I've sought direction about it, and now I fuel my running, and it just helps your performance, and it helps your recovery, it helps you get faster, it helps you sleep. Nutrition is a huge key in dialing in your optimal running body. And so I encourage you, if you want to know more about it, to seek out some help and resources for that, because I promise running nutrition is a lot more than to just eat a plate of pasta the night before a marathon. There's a lot that goes into it. Okay, I'm gonna chug up this hill here. This cemetery is pretty hilly. Okay, so the next thing I have in my notes about that we went over the past 10 weeks, and I'd like to reiterate for our last one together, is about new goals, next steps. We talked about next steps last week, and we talked about goal setting for running the week before, and I went over the SMART goals, the things that you need to think about when making a goal, and how they have to be specific and measurable and attainable and realistic, and kind of a timestamp on it. You know, if you just say, well, I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to run 10 miles, or, you know, I want to be able to do a back handspring, you know, whatever your athletic goal is. If it's vague, you're not going to get there. But if it's very specific, I want to run a 5K by July of 2023, then that's something you can work towards. And if it's measurable, if you're writing down your runs, if you're seeing how far you've come now versus when you started 10 weeks ago, and you see the distance you've traveled, how you're feeling, and you're able to physically look at that because you're keeping a journal, or, you know, you have a watch or something in your phone, whatever, then that can be an encouragement to you, even when you have a run that feels yucky and bad. And that happens to everybody, and that's just part of training. I went on a run last week when I first started getting back into doing training from being in my off season, and boy, oh boy, that was rough. And it's very discouraging, even though I knew I have some fitness to get back as far as my running speeds and things go, it's still very discouraging. And I have to tell myself not to be discouraged, because that's just part of training. You know, if you're exactly where you want to be in training, then maybe you need to train and have some goals that are a little harder than where you're at. Because training it's hard, and it can be boring, and it can be discouraging. And part of the measurement section of making goals is to be able to look back and see your progress, even on days where it doesn't feel like you've made much progress. But I'm pretty sure that if you looked at your data and stats from 10 weeks ago when you first started to now, you can definitely see that progress. I mean, come on, you're running for 30 minutes straight, or 10 weeks ago, you were only running for 1 minute and walking for 4 for 30 minutes. So just look how far you've come in that short amount of time. Think of where you can be a year from now, 2 years from now, and make those goals so that you keep at it, you keep striving towards something. And the attainable part we talked about kind of goes hand in hand with the realistic part, and that sometimes it sounds the same, but that sometimes based on our lives, even though something might be physically attainable, realistically, we may have to adjust that. You know, sickness, we talked about childcare, we talked about work and balance and all of that. Sometimes even though we may have an attainable goal that we could do if we had all the time, sometimes are not realistic just because of life. And so sometimes we do have to pull back on those goals and adjust them. And then the time, you know, make sure you have an end date, and understand that that end date can also be changeable and adjustable. And I talked about last year pulling out of the marathon that I was supposed to do in Cincinnati because I just was not getting my my training in for that, and I would have been dying by the end of that, and not to mention not coming close to what my goals were for that. So speaking of marathons, I have signed up for the Charlotte Marathon, and that will be held November 4th, 2023. And they also have a half marathon and a 5K. So if you are in the Charlotte area, or you're going to be going to that race, and you know, you're going to be in that area in November, then send me an email and we'll try to get together for coffee. We can talk about running. I can cheer you on if you're in like the 5K. And I'm very excited about getting back into marathon training. I haven't run a marathon since Chicago of 2019. So I am very interested to see what I can do this year, since it's actually been longer than I was thinking since I've been in a marathon. Okay, we are, let's see, you only have about 2 minutes left before we have our 5-minute cool down. I hope this went by as quickly for you as it did for me. I know when I'm doing these podcast episodes and talking and, you know, trying to keep the conversation, this one-sided conversation going, my brain is working overtime, and it makes the time for running go by really fast. So maybe for my sake, when I get to some of those longer runs, I'll just talk to myself and just record myself talking. But after, let's see, we have, all right, so you have 1 minute left. So I want to get a few things in here before we end our time together. I want to tune in next week. I'm going to be talking about RPE, and it's something I haven't talked a lot about in the past 10 weeks, rate of perceived effort. It's a way for you to self-measure how you're feeling during a run, so that your easy runs are easy, that your hard runs are hard. And for those of you who are going to be continuing to run by time and not really thinking about pace right now, that is a good way to learn how to do the runs that you're supposed to do with some purpose, is to understand RPE and where different runs should feel. And then when you get into more of pacing and things like that, you can also check in with RPE sometimes, because that information can tell you a lot. Okay, cool down 5 minutes. That can tell you a lot about where you really are. And when I'm feeling, or I'm running a run that's supposed to be easy, and I'm feeling like it's really hard, that's a signal to me that I may be overtraining. And that's one of the first signs of it, is that stuff that felt easy, say 3 weeks ago, isn't feeling easy. So I'm going to talk about that next week at the podcast. And then the following week is also, especially for you guys who are just starting out with running, is gaining confidence in your running. And it's been proven time and time again that if you don't feel confident in your ability to work out what you're doing in training, that it may just fall by the wayside if you don't always have someone there to tell you exactly what to do. And I know that can be very difficult. I like to be, told do A, B, C, D, and then this is going to happen. But I have learned over time that the more I can do by myself and the more knowledge I have by myself to be able to work this stuff out, the more confident I am, so that when I do go out for a run, I'm really not caring about what anyone else is thinking. If I'm running too slow, or if I'm running, if I look like a moron or whatever, I have learned that confidence is something that can go a long way, so that wherever you are, when, if you're on vacation, if we lose power, whatever, you can have the confidence to be able to say, you know what, this is what I can do. I can put together this warm up. I can go out for this long. I know where I am in my running. I know this is going to produce good results. So my desire is that you gain some really good confidence in how to put together some training plans, where to look that's reputable, so that you can learn even more about running. Knowledge is power, and I know you've heard that a million times, but it really is. The more that we know, the more confident that we can be in ourselves. We'll know if something isn't good for us. We'll know if something's going to work or not. And, if you want to keep being consistent with running, then confidence will go a long way for that. So that's going to be in 2 weeks. And then the week after that will be the podcast episode with Dr. Wolf about recovery and how our bodies can recover well from running. Okay, let's check here. We've got now 2 more minutes in our cool down. As always, if you have any questions about running and where to go from here, if you'd like help with looking at some of your stats and putting together some plans, or any question really, you can email me at sherry@wrinkledrunner.com. I love getting the questions. It really helps me to produce content for the podcast. And I probably will have a Q&A podcast episode in April, one of the last ones before the season is ended, because I've had quite a few questions over the past 2 months or so, and I always answer you via email when you ask a question. So I always get back to you right away, but it helps everybody else as well, because I know for every one person that emails me with a question, there's probably a lot of people that have the same question. And since I've been running for probably, I think, about 18 years now, sometimes I forget the questions that I had when I first started out, and then I don't cover it and nobody else covers it. And so I don't want you to be in the dark about anything. So if you have any questions, please do email me, even if it's just to let me know that you did this run. And those of you who couldn't join me live, you can email me as well when you do listen to this and when you get to that point, just to let me know that you made it, you did it, you got through that the first 30-minute run. Your homework for this week is to do it however many times that you did the last couple of runs. This is a big step. Okay, 2, 1, cool down is over. Just want to say though, this is a really big step, this 30 minutes straight. So if you've only been running for 3 times a week or 4 times a week or 5 times a week, whatever you have been doing the past few weeks, do that this week. Don't bump up to another day for another couple of weeks. Just stay consistent with what you've been doing. Get your body used to this 30 minutes. And I hope to see you or hear you, get to know you in the next week. So thanks for joining in, guys.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you know another runner who could benefit from today's topic, go ahead and share it. Do you have any running questions? You can ask me. Email me at sherry@wrinkledrunner.com, and if I can't answer your question, I will do the research to find the answer and share it with you. The questions I get from listeners like you help me develop episodes, so please don't be shy. You can sign up for my once-a-month newsletter using the link provided so that you can have all the Wrinkled Runner resources from the past month all in one place. I also have opened up my virtual coaching in addition to coaching one-on-one with those in the Buffalo, New York area. So head to my coaching page on the Wrinkled Runner website, which I will, of course, link to, and check out how we may be able to work together. Until next Monday, thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the run.